comments, questions, reach out to us, and we'll be happy to take them. So we asked you to complete a baseline evaluation, and this is what the results look like across the class. So that gives you an idea that there are some people who already have some degree of mastery, right, of the content, or of the key-ish parts of the content, because the things that the baseline evaluation asked about were, for the topics that we're teaching, what are the most important takeaways. So for those people, there might be some additional detail that you will learn, and that's great. But then there are also other people who have very limited familiarity, and that's perfectly okay as well, right? The goal is that we will be able to shift this histogram, so to speak, shift it from where the median is around 7 and shift it forward. So that's the goal that we sort of set for all of ourselves, for you, for us, for you. We're hoping that you will spend additional time, right, to make sure that you're looking at the material in class, outside of class, following the homework, doing the labs, coming to the labs, and that's how you get a well-rounded experience of this training. So I have talked about the statistical software a bit. We will teach a few concepts by hand, right? But that's not the key goal. So the concept that we're teaching by hand, it's mostly for you to understand how things work, right? Like the mean we're going to teach by hand. Yeah, we will also show you how it works in the software, but we will not teach logistic regression by hand, right? A lot of the material that we will teach, it will be based on the software, and we'll focus mostly on the output of the software. Like what would you see when you implement the methods? And in some cases in the class, we will show you the code, but most times we would leave like the code and all of that back end things to the labs, right? So there are some key issues to note about SPSS and R, and we wanted to make sure that you get it. The reason why we're teaching SPSS is because it's point and click. It's easy to get into, and in many places it's readily available. And this is a poll that I did on Twitter, and you see that a large group of people said they already had it on their softwares, so that sort of guided how we designed this. Now, the SPSS has some important limitations, although it has its own code and all that, but it's not free, right? So if you get into SPSS, that means that you will need to pay for it to buy it, right? We are not able to provide it to you for free. And that means that if there are updates to SPSS next year, you might need to buy a new version. So that's important to bear in mind if you choose that SPSS as the path you're going to go down. Now, R is fully code-based, right? So it's fairly simple code, and you will find a lot of it on Google. So the key thing to remember about coding in general, one thing that programmers don't tell you is that the best programmer is someone who knows where to search for the code, right? Nobody's putting the codes in their heads. You just need to go online and you will find people who have already said, oh, this is how you're going to do this. This is how you're going to implement this in R. So that's important to bear in mind. So initially it seems daunting if that's your first time approaching code, but then quickly you'll be able to get to it as you practice, right? So these are key points that we wanted you to bear in mind. The final point is that we have a course data set. So we're going to use sample data sets for the course, and some of them are simulated, some of them are based on real data sets, right? So we ask that you be respectful of those data sets and not like freely circulated beyond the class, right? We're going to make them available to you for work, to answer questions, to learn essentially, and then we'll take it from there. You will come across some of them in the homework, in the lectures, and there'll be a description of what we're doing. So I will take questions. I see that there is people who have questions, someone who has a raised hand before I jump off and have Dr. Motayo start the class. You're going to be able to share your screen, right?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
My screen.
So the other thing I want to say quickly is that I ask that you change your name, your Zoom, the name on your Zoom, to a name that you want us to call you by. Right? It's going to be hard to call you by the name of your phone, or by, so we ask that you change the name on your Zoom so that we can be able to, because to make this as participatory as possible, we will cold call people, okay, to answer questions, and we will also, like, invite you to talk, and many times we will need to like call your name to respond, okay? So I have Infinix Hot 5 Lights. Yeah, that's, hopefully you change your name afterwards, but can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, good evening.
Hi, yeah, good evening.
My name is Sharif Hassan.
Okay.
My question is, what is the difference between SPSS and R?
Okay, so the key thing to note is that both of them are statistical softwares, right? And you know what I think? I think that's this question you will best answer by engaging with the softwares yourself, right? So you should participate in the SPSS lab and in the R lab, and then you can decide which one you think that you're going to be able to best use. So SPSS, quickly, is a point and click. It's kind of like if you have used Microsoft Word, right? You'll be able to use SPSS. Like you can click file, click, and then you can implement the procedure. So it's that straightforward. But the challenge with SPSS is that it's not reproducible, right? So with R, you will be able to write your code and have your code and your data set in one place and come back to it in 20 years time and just run the code again, and it will do exactly the same thing that you did 20 years ago, right? But with SPSS, you always have to redo the analysis, unless you have saved the analysis that you did in some place. So it requires additional steps to make it reproducible. And so that often ends up being a challenge. So we're not going to be able to like go into the details of one software versus the other. So my advice is, if you're not sure, participate in the first sessions of both softwares, right? And then decide, participate, go to the R session, see if you're able to engage with it, and then you can decide. I don't want us to go into too much detail, so that we have enough time for this class, but I'll take one more question. So Magnus, we're waiting for you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yes, sir. My question is actually similar to the initial person that asked question. I want to ask, if SPSS is used for quantitative analysis, I guess, so what is R used for?
Quantitative analysis, you mean?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, R is also used for quantitative analysis. They're used for the same things, actually. And it's not just SPSS and R that are available to do those analyses. There's so many different types of softwares. There is Stata, there is SAS. A lot of these softwares, they're paid softwares. Like, there are companies that manage them and release them, and you have to buy the softwares, right? It's just R that is free. And that's why that's one of the ones that that's the one that we're actually most preferring for the purpose of this class. We're also teaching SPSS because many people already have it, and it's going to be easy to get into.
Okay, sir. All right.
Okay, all right. So I will jump off, and then if you have any other questions, I will address them in the Q&A. So there's a Q&A button just below, if it's above on your Zoom, where you can type your questions, and I'll respond to them as best as possible. But I want us to get started with the class. Thank you very much.